Happy ho ho holidays! This is day 5 here at Care Life Podcast. My name is Kenzie Rock, and you're listening to a holiday special 12 Days of Christmas. And you have to stick around for today's magical, amazing episode. Quite literally, it will be magical. But before we begin, please remember to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave a review for us on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. Link will be in the description down below. So, a very nice, wise man by the name of Gene Steinmeier once said, "The art of a magician is not found in the simple deception, but in what surrounds it, the construction of reality which supports the illusion." Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is the host of Reading with Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. He has presented his internationally acclaimed educational magic show at thousands of schools throughout US and Puerto Rico. Joining us from Boston is the magician Jed Doherty. Okay, Jed, welcome to Care Life.
Good morning. So good to be here.
We are glad to have you here, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Yeah, the winter holidays here in the States, it's a great time. We just finished celebrating our Thanksgiving, a very different Thanksgiving because of the pandemic. Usually we have 30 people over to our house to celebrate the dinner. This year it was just me and my beautiful wife celebrating together, but we were able to cook and share some food for folks who would normally be with us who weren't able to cook for themselves. So that was nice. And we're getting ready to celebrate Christmas. And then of course we also celebrate Hanukkah and Kwanzaa here. And you know, it's just such a wonderful, wonderful time of year.
Okay, so today we will be speaking to you about your career. You're a magician, as I know, Jed, right?
Yeah, for the past 30 plus years, I've been traveling around the United States and Puerto Rico, presenting educational magic shows primarily in schools, but also at churches and libraries and special events.
So tell us your story. How did this all begin, you being a magician and all?
It was divine inspiration. I had been working as a social worker. I was working in the juvenile justice system, working with kids who had committed crimes and I did work with them in a couple of different venues. I was working with kids in secure facilities where they, were in a facility for a certain amount of time. And then I was working with them, trying to help them re-socialize. It was a wonderful career, but it was really hard. And it took a lot out of me. And at some point I said, I can't do this anymore. Just emotionally, I wasn't strong enough to continue doing it. I was bringing everything home. And so I sat down and I said a prayer and I said, "What do you want me to do?" And I didn't hear a voice back at that moment, but I sat down, I started to read the newspaper, and the first article that I was able to focus on was an article that was letting people know that Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus were in town, and they were having auditions for clowns that afternoon. And I looked up to heaven and I said, "You've got to be kidding me." But it wasn't a joke. I went into the audition having nothing else to do. And I just knew at that moment when I was making people laugh that this is what I was meant to do. So I started clowning and then started learning just little simple magic tricks and discovered that people really loved it. And I also discovered that magic was a wonderful way to tell stories. And I love storytelling and I love teaching. So that's how I really grew into becoming a magician full time.
That's amazing. And I personally love magic. I've been trying to learn tricks this whole year, but never gotten the hang of it, even for one. I've been trying coin tricks, but it hasn't been working for me. Why do you love being a magician?
I love being a magician because of the smiles. when I'm up on stage in front of 500 people, I'm looking out, and what I am seeing are 500 sets of eyes that are wide open. I'm seeing 500 smiles. I'm seeing looks of amazement and hearing laughter and joy. And that's an incredible feeling to be the cause of all that joy to happen. That's such a gift and a blessing. And so that's I just can't yeah, I just can't explain how wonderful it is.
Wow. And I know being a magician can be stressful because you have to make sure that kids love you, they love the tricks. How do you handle these stressful situations when you're performing magic?
It was stressful early on, and before every show I'd be a bundle of nerves. But then a very wise magician told me to kind of look at that in a different way, to recognize that feeling, those butterflies in my belly, and understand that that's the same feeling that I get when I'm excited. And so
Mhm.
if I could train myself to when I was flies in my belly, to not look at it as being nervous, but to understand that I was actually excited, that really helped a lot. And so now when I'm going out on stage, or now during the pandemic, if I'm getting ready to perform for an audience via Zoom, those butterflies are still there, but I am acknowledging those butterflies as excitement and something that I'm really looking forward to.
Speaking of butterflies and being anxious about performing to other people, what are some things you wish you had known before you began performing magic to kids or to other audiences?
Wow, that's a great question. I guess the very first time I tried to perform a magic trick, it was a complete failure. And it was talk about bombing, and I was in front of 10,000 people in a football stadium. So I I look back and I kind of wish I'd known all the things that were going to go wrong before I went out that day, so I could have prevented them. But as I look back, I'm really grateful that that terrible show happened, because I learned a lot from that show. And ultimately the big trick that I wanted to do and perform, it actually happened, and that was successful. So that was good. I guess if I had known how much fun I would have had becoming a performer, I would have started doing it earlier.
Speaking of you failing on your first trick, was that your biggest failure that you've ever had?
As a performer, I think so, yeah. Because it was a nightmare. It was a stadium full of people, and I had a musician with me and a narrator. And so I had verbal cues that the narrator would kind of set off, and we had cues the music would set off. But what I didn't know going in is that the stadium, I had to choose between music or a narration. They couldn't both be heard at the same time. So that was something horrible to realize at that time. But yeah, that was probably the biggest failure I had.
But despite the failures, I'm pretty sure you've had amazing moments, amazing successes that maybe you never predicted. Can you tell us some of these fun, exciting moments you've had along the way?
I wrote about it in a book called Real Magic. I was in a school outside of New York City,
Mhm.
and in a community that had a very high population of recent immigrants from South America and the Caribbean. So I knew that there was a large number of Spanish speaking people in the audience. And I asked this one little girl to come up on stage with me. And when she got up on stage with me in front of 1,800 kids, I said, "Hey, what's your name?" And she didn't say anything. She just kind of stared. And I said, she must speak Spanish, no problem. ¿Cómo se llama? And again, nothing. And the audience, I said, well, my friend must feel a little bit nervous. Could you give her a round of applause and make her feel at home? And they did. And after they finished clapping, she said, Me llamo es Maria. And I said, Maria, how are you? So we did the show, and I was trying to speak to her in Spanish and then speak to the audience in English, but I'm not bilingual, and I would mess up sometimes. And sometimes I would speak to her in English and then speak to the audience in Spanish. And that was kind of funny. But I noticed that she was answering me in whatever language I addressed her in. If I spoke to her in English, she answered me in English. Spoke to her in Spanish, she answered me in Spanish. And so she finished the trick, and the audience gave her a nice round of applause, and she went back to her seat. And I didn't think anything of it until after the show. And Maria came back into the auditorium with her teacher as I was breaking down. And Maria had this beautiful smile on her face. Her teacher was crying and in tears. And I said, my goodness, what's wrong? And the teacher said gently, you have no idea. Maria has been in our school for 2 years. She's autistic. In all that time, she hasn't said a word to anybody in any language. We didn't know she could speak. How did you make her speak? And of course, I said, I had nothing to do with that. It was you. You made her feel comfortable. This audience made her feel respected and welcome. And that's what helped her feel comfortable enough to let you all know she could speak. There have been many moments like that over the course of 30 years, and I'm humbled by them. And I'm always amazed and feel so thankful that I was able to be part of moments like that.
That's beautiful, Jed. And you're very lucky to experience moments like this, especially with these children and with their parents and teachers. I'm pretty sure they appreciate you being around these kids and making it may be small or big, but still it is a positive difference in their lives. And if I may ask, can you tell me about a time you had absolutely no idea what you were doing, except from the beginning, along the way when you knew that, okay, I've gained confidence, I'm now gaining practice in my magic? Was there a time that you were like, oh my God, Jed, what am I doing? Because you had no idea.
Well, certainly that first day in front of 10,000 people and everything was going wrong. I really felt, and it was probably lucky that there was no place for me to run. If I would try to run off stage, it would have taken me 5 minutes because it was such a big pitch. There have been moments. I remember one moment when I was on stage at a church performing for a group of college kids, which was unusual. They were much older than the normal, and my daughter was stage at the time, and she was only 8 years old at the time, and we performed a lot together. And there was one moment in the show where I brought a young man from college on stage, and I just started improvising. And I had no idea where I was going. It was just divine inspiration. My daughter at one point was on stage with me, just kind of whispered. She said, Poppy, what are you doing? This isn't part of the show. And I said to her, baby, I don't know what we're doing, but just go. Trust me. It's out of my hands. Just trust me. I think we're going to end up in a good place. And it was a really good place. And just one of those magical moments that's unexplainable.
You've performed for a very long time for very large audiences. What are some of your favorite tricks that you've had, or some tricks that the audiences seem to love the most?
All right, I'm going to do something for you right now. Oh, just give me 1 second.
It's okay.
Now, the folks who are listening to this, they can't see it. But what I want to do is, Phyllis, I want to show you that this bag, I have this bag, and I want to show you that this bag is empty, just like head. And so, Phyllis, I don't know if you know this. Before we started speaking, I magically put an invisible egg right over your head. Can you look up and see it right over your head? Yeah.
Okay.
Do you see the egg there?
Why can't I?
Well, because it's invisible. You're not supposed to be able to see it.
Oh, right.
That's right. Okay, so reach up and use your imagination and pull the egg down.
Okay, I've pulled it down.
Now feel it in both of your hands. Feel it, don't scramble it.
Yeah, I'm not scrambling it.
Okay.
It's in my hand.
Now, what I want you to do, if you really believe you have an egg inside your hand, you're going to be able to throw it up in the air and have it land inside this bag. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
I'm going to count to 3. When I get to 3, that's when you throw it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3. Whoa. Whoa.
You got it?
It's magic. When you use your imagination, magical things can happen. And this is one of my favorite tricks. It's a simple little trick. Those of you who can't see it, I have an ordinary cloth bag. There's a mesh in front of it so you can see what's inside the bag. And Phyllis was actually able to see the egg fall into the bag from the sky. And I love this trick for a number of different reasons. Number one, most of all, I love it because when that egg appears, I get the reaction that you had, that big smile and the look of amazement. I also love this trick because it was a gift, and a lot of my tricks that are in my show were gifts. I was in Washington, D.C. with my wife and my son. He was just born. I think he was 6 or 7 months old. And we went into a magic shop, Al Cohen's magic shop, a legendary shop. And I just went up to the proprietor and introduced myself. And I said, "Hey, do you have anything here that is unique that I may not have seen?" And he pulled out this bag, this prop, and showed me how you can use it to make magic. And it's been part of my show ever since. And it's just such a wonderful way to help the audience. And one of the things I do with my audiences usually is I say to the kids in the audience, I say, I want everybody here who loves and cares for Phyllis to count to three. And when we get to three, that's when I want you to throw that egg. And so after the egg appears and we bring it out and everybody's amazed, I ask the volunteer on stage, I says, "Do you remember I said I wanted everybody here who loved you to count to three? Did you hear how many people were counting? Did that make you feel good inside?" And then I remind the kids that when we help somebody feel loved and cared for, we help them do amazing, magical things.
That's so nice. And that's actually a trick I've never seen before. And I'm a person who looks for magic tricks a lot, but that was one trick. Great job, Jed. I never saw that coming. Who are your biggest inspirations, Jed, when you're performing magic?
Well, the biggest inspirations are probably a group of comedians from the 30s and 40s called the Three Stooges. They were really very silly guys, and they made lots of little short films. There was a lot of slapstick comedy, a lot of hitting each other in the head and falling down and whatnot. As far as magical inspirations, two teachers that I've had that taught me a lot. One is Jeff McBride, who's a world famous magician. He's based in Las Vegas now. And I also studied with a magician from Chicago who's recently passed away. His name was Eugene Berger. And they were very, very different ends of the spectrum. Jeff typically does huge stage shows with lots of movement and props. Eugene was a much more quiet, sedate kind of performer, more intimate. I learned so much from both of them. And the main thing I learned from both of them is that magic isn't about standing on stage and saying, "Look at me, look how great I am." Magic's about helping the people in the audience feel special and magical.
Speaking of Vegas, Jed, I don't think there's any person who will visit Vegas for one night and not come across any magician along the way. And the tricks are amazing. The props are phenomenal. Do these props actually work? Because you find a lot of magicians have a lot of props, and most magic involves props. Do these props actually work?
Well, if the magician using the props uses it correctly, then yeah. But if they don't, they won't. The neat thing about this egg bag that I showed you, this is a prop. And if you use it correctly, then it can make somebody feel amazed. You can also use this same prop to make somebody feel stupid. To hide the egg. Oh, the egg is here. Now it's disappeared. Now it's here. And what do you think it is? And really kind of frustrate the audience. I don't ever like to perform those kind of tricks. I always like to make my audience feel loved and amazed and make them feel like the star. So the props themselves, they're things. You know, this doesn't do magic on its own, but
Mhm.
in the hands of somebody with skills and talent, and I think love in their hearts, the props can really create some magical moments.
What are some of the myths, Jed, you've heard about your career or your industry, about magicians mostly?
I didn't hear the question quite well. So
Okay, what are some of the myths that you've heard about your industry, about being a magician? And if there are some myths, what would you like to correct about them?
the biggest myth is that kids ask me all the time if I have magical powers, and I always tell them the truth. I do not have any magical powers. The only power I have is the power to read, the power to learn something new, and then the power to use my imagination to take those new skills and hopefully use them to help people feel entertained. A lot of people believe in what we refer to here as black magic. And like I said, magical powers, as if like they're portrayed in books like Harry Potter. I don't believe that those powers exist. I don't believe they're real. Magic to me, it's theater. Whether it's being presented in the street or in a theater or in a stadium, what we're doing is we're using tricks and skills that we've learned through years of study to entertain people. But if you come across somebody who is telling you that they can put a spell on you, that they have magical powers, that they can look into the future, and are using that to try to manipulate you or control you, that's not true. I don't believe that, and I'd like to clear that up.
What you mentioned is actually very helpful because I think that people believe magic is an actual power, quote unquote, because of biblical concepts. In the
Mhm.
Bible, we have sorcerers, we have dark magic in the Bible, which God states that it's evil. And then when you jump into this modern world, we have fictional books that suggest that magic is something you have to learn and gain power over. But is it okay to mention that magic is science and science is magic?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned the Bible. I have a very strong faith and look to the Bible for inspiration. And as I mentioned, I believe that it was heaven that led me to the stage and to magic. My church is the Catholic Church, and one of the
Mhm.
traditions that we have in the Catholic Church is we believe in the communion of saints, that when somebody passes on, that they're in heaven, and that there are some people who have passed on to heaven that we recognize as saints who have done amazing things. One of those saints, Saint John Bosco, actually began his ministry by doing tricks, by doing acrobatics and magic tricks in little town squares. And St. John Bosco built up an order of priests and nuns called the Salesians, and they exist all over the world. And because this one man did magic tricks hundreds of years ago to spread the gospel, that that one trick in a village square has turned into a worldwide movement that is serving orphans and sick people, millions of people all over the world. So I know that there are a lot of people who believe that magic, doing magic tricks for entertainment, is prohibited. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's what Jesus is speaking about in the gospel. What I believe is that what Jesus is warning us against are people, like I was saying, people who use the secret knowledge that I've gained by studying to manipulate people and to hurt people and to bully people.
You know, Jed, you remind me of a very famous magician, the magical Houdini, who passed away a long time ago. And Houdini had the same concepts as you. He did magic for the smiles of the kids, for the smiles of the audience. Though his magic tricks were top notch and the props he used today are somewhat dangerous because his final act was due to a fault on his act, as they say. But
what are some of the magicians that are a huge mentor to you?
The two I have an act in my trick. It's called the chair suspension, and what it is, the audience sees two ordinary folding chairs on stage, and a board lying across the top. And what I do is I invite a member of the audience to sit and then lie down on the board. I then ask the person to stay perfectly still. And then I take the chair out from underneath their feet and then the board out from underneath their body. And then they are balanced on top of that remaining folding chair in a way that is just amazing. That trick was gifted to me. Again, I had the pleasure of seeing Penn and Teller perform, and somehow we ended up being able to meet them backstage. And my beautiful wife at the time turned to Teller, who is typically silent on stage, and said, "You did that trick with the chair and the board, and could you teach my husband how to do that?" And I was terribly embarrassed because you never do that with a magician. But Teller was very gracious, and when he learned that I perform for students and perform to inspire kids, he sat down with me and told me, didn't tell me the secret, but told me where I needed to go to learn the secrets and what books I needed to read. And shortly after that encounter, that trick became part of my show, and it's been in the show for 28 years, and it's just amazing.
Jad, you've mentioned books where you have learned that trick. What are some of these books that people can purchase or find so that they can learn actual magic tricks? Because there are books out there that just give you wrong information and your tricks end up being dangerous to humankind. So what are the right books or right places for people to go magic?
Uh, there is a book by a very good friend of mine. She is known as the First Lady of Magic in Australia. Her name is Sue Ann Webster. And she has a book that is available as an ebook on Amazon called Astounding. It is an absolute treasure of a magic book in a number of ways because it not only teaches you some amazing tricks, and if you can go through that book and learn enough magic in that book to entertain people for an hour. But the other thing that Sue Ann writes about is she writes about using magic in the right way to be respectful of your audience. She writes and talks about the fact that if as a performer it's important for you to take a shower and brush your teeth and make sure your clothes are clean. All those kind of little things that sometimes we take for granted when we're interacting with people. So that would be the book that I would encourage people to find. It's called Astounding, and it's written by Sue Ann Webster.
Speaking of which, Jed, are there rules that magicians should follow, every single magician, or like do's and don'ts of magicians?
Yeah, some of the do's and don'ts, typically we don't reveal our secrets. Although there's sometimes if I can teach somebody how to do a magic trick in order to teach a greater lesson, I'll oftentimes do that. There was one time I had a wonderful, wonderful audience. I was outside at a playground in a public event. There were a lot of kids just there from the community, and it was a predominantly Christian community. And then there was a group of kids that came in from a Jewish camp to see the show. And then there was another camp that came in, and most of those kids were Muslim. And after the show, the kids were crowding around me and asking me questions. And the rabbi of the kids from the Jewish camp came up and said, "Can you teach these guys a trick?" And I did, and I taught them a trick, and it's hard to teach on Skype without visuals. But basically, the lesson was that God, we can always find God in every moment in our lives. And it was a wonderful moment because I was able to tell the kids from the Jewish camp and the Muslim camp and the Christian camp that we all believe in the same God and that we're all brothers and sisters. So at that moment, it felt right for me to be able to reveal that little secret. Another trick that magicians should remember is never do the same trick twice for the same audience.
That sounds about right, because they'll get bored, right?
They'll get bored. They might figure out the secret. But again, it's, yeah, I like to just keep on moving and do something different and really keep the audience intrigued and amazed.
Okay, and what are some things that magicians should do, like they must do?
Smile. I think that that is so important. A smile is a gift, and it can really change somebody's life. It can change your own outlook. If you know, one of the things, there are days, I'll do 300 shows in a year, and so there are mornings when I get up, I'm in a driven all night long, I'm tired, I don't necessarily feel a lot of energy, but if I put that smile on my face, suddenly I start to feel differently and the audience feels differently. So I think number one, magicians should always remember to smile, and also always remember to be respectful of your audience and to understand that you are there to serve them, that they're not there to feed your ego.
Chad, you have traveled a lot, performing magic and doing tricks around the world. What are some of the countries or locations you've been at?
Well, I've traveled all over the United States, and I've traveled to Puerto Rico and a couple of countries in Central America, Panama and Costa Rica. But that's it. I would love to travel to Kenya and Nigeria and Uganda and China and Australia and India and everywhere I can go. I just hope that God blesses me with enough time on this earth to make it to all those places.
And is there a point where you see yourself ever performing for a big, honorable stage in Vegas?
No, no, and I that doesn't interest me at all.
Uh-huh.
I love performing in schools. I love performing for kids. One of the things that I've been doing lately is I have a podcast called the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I love doing that and inspiring families to read together more. So yeah, Vegas isn't something that I aspire to these days.
Wow, that I never expected you to say that. I expected you to be so psyched up because most people believe that for you to get, let's say, a great career in magic, you have to perform for that one big final stage in Vegas. But for you, it's quite different.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's something that I learned over the years. And I meet a lot of young people, and whether it's magic or music or sports, they think that the only way to be happy and to achieve that dream of making that thing that they love their career, their life, they think that they have to reach the very, very top. And of course, working hard to get to the top, that's great. But I don't need to make it to Vegas to understand that I've made millions of people amazed by magic, and that to me is what feels like such a blessing. So I love that being in a big theater is wonderful. It's amazing, but you have these lights in your eyes, and you can't, when you look out, you just see darkness. You don't see, you hear the audience, you don't see them. When I'm performing in a school for 1,000 kids in a gymnasium, I see every single face, and I love that.
That's amazing. Jad, if you were to see your younger self right now, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, wow. So many mistakes I've made over the years. But, my kids ask me that, if I could go back in time and change something. And I used to say to my kids, no, because every mistake I made along the way led me to this moment in my life. And if I had made something different, then maybe I would have met somebody different, and I wouldn't have had I would have married the beautiful woman who's been my wife for 30 years. I wouldn't have had the two kids that are now grown up and adults, and I wouldn't have had the chance to be their dad. So I think if I were be able to speak to my younger self, it would be to relax and have faith and understand whatever trouble that you're going through right now, things are going to get better.
And how would you say your journey as a magician has shaped you to the person you are today?
Ah, Well, it shaped me because before I started being a magician, I was much heavier. So it shaped me. It made me thinner and more fit. I think it's just helped me so many moments, like I mentioned with Maria on stage. I've been able to trust that there is a God operating in my life and is leading me in different directions and suggesting that I take different paths, and learning to trust that has really made a big difference in my life.
And that's amazing, Jed. And if money was never an option to you, let's say you were comfortable in life, you were the richest man on this planet, what would you do every single day? Would you still continue doing magic?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's an absolute option for you that no matter what, you always, always do magic till the end.
Absolutely. It is a gift. It is an honor and a privilege to be in front of kids and to make them smile.
Okay, and how do you vision yourself 10 years from now? For you, for your family, for your magic tricks?
Well, 10 years from now, I'll be even very much older than I am right now. So I imagine there won't be much hair left on top, and whatever hair is there will be gray. I imagine I'll be moving a little bit slower, but I really hope that there'll be grandkids in my life at that time. And I really hope that I continue to smile.
I do hope your vision comes to life. It sounds so beautiful, Jed.
Thank you.
And if you're in my shoes right now, what question would you have asked yourself that I possibly didn't?
Wow, I don't know. I can't think of any. You've done a very good job.
Thank you very much.
I would ask myself, I'd say, gently, you mentioned you have a podcast. Where can we listen to it? And I would say,
That is actually my next question for you.
mind. I was able to read your mind.
So before we end, can you give us a few tricks? I'd actually love to put this episode on YouTube so that they can actually see your magic tricks for themselves.
Sure. 1 second, please.
Okay.
Oh, let me get my ears back on. The best thing for me to do to perform this would be to move back a little bit from
It's
the
okay.
so I won't be able to hear you necessarily, but we'll give it a shot. And I'm going to move my microphone just over here. And
Okay.
see, Phyllis, do you know what this is?
It's a dollar bill.
Yes, it is. You're so intelligent, Phyllis. It is a dollar bill from the United States. I don't know. Do you know who that person is on the dollar bill?
It's a president, but I don't remember who is exactly on the dollar bill.
That's okay. No problem. It's George Washington, our first president. I was at a high school and I asked a young lady who was 16 years old who that was here in the United States. And she said, Abraham Washington. And I said, no, Abraham Washington, he was a vampire slayer. So, Phyllis, we're gonna fold this dollar bill. I can fold it like this or like that. Which way would you like, this or that?
The first way.
So this.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're gonna fold it again. I can fold it like this or like that.
Like this.
Like this. Like this.
Yeah.
Perfect. Do you know, people think that money is the most important thing in their life, but I don't.
Some do.
Phyllis, again, we're going to fold it like this or like that. Which way would you prefer?
Facing me.
Facing you.
Fold
Like
it
that.
towards you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. One more time. Like this or like that.
Facing you this time.
Facing me this time. Awesome.
Yes.
Phyllis, like I said before, sometimes people think money's the most important thing in their life, but I know that money can come and money can. Phyllis, could you blow just like that? Oh, don't spit. Don't spit. That's just blow my hand. I know that money can come and money can go. But the things that can last forever are the friendships that we make, friendships that are based on respect and love and trust. You were an amazing helper. Would you like to see another?
Yeah, I would.
Phyllis, have you ever heard, you mentioned Vegas a couple of times. Do you
Uh-huh.
know that in Vegas, sometimes a magician will bring a person on stage and then cut the person in half?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, I know how to do the first part of that trick perfectly,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know how to put the person back together again. So I can't do that. I can't do. But what I can do is I can take a piece of rope, cut it in half, and then with your
Mhm.
help, make it come back together again. So
Okay, let's do it.
we're gonna do this. We're gonna find the middle of the rope down here somewhere, and let me see. Oh, I need my scissors here. So we're gonna cut this rope right here in the middle.
Mhm.
Now, Phyllis, how many pieces of rope did we start with?
One
One, yeah.
strand of straw. Yeah.
And then we cut it in half. How many do we have now?
Two.
Two. If I take these two pieces and I tie them together, how many pieces of rope will we have?
Just one that's joint.
Now, actually, it's two that just tied together.
Yeah.
Don't worry, don't worry. Somebody from Italy said three one time, and I said no. So we're gonna wrap this rope around my hand like
Mhm.
so. So, Phyllis, what I need you to do is, can you bring your hands together like this, just like mine?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we're gonna say the magic words. Now, the
Mhm.
magic words are: the magic between us is respect and kindness. Now, I need you to wiggle your hips a little bit while you do that.
Okay.
And say the magic words. The magic
Magic within
between
us,
is respect
respect
and
and
kindness.
kindness.
Now, you're not going to
Uh-huh.
believe, but that rope has come back.
Oh my, how did that happen?
It happened because we were respectful and kind to each other. Phyllis, you were an amazing participant and helper. Thank you so very much.
It's my pleasure. You're an amazing magician.
This has been fun. I would love for people to listen to my podcast, because one of the things that I think is most magical in our lives, you don't have to learn any tricks. You don't, but when family time reading together, that is such a magical experience, and it can help so many different ways. And the best way it helps us is it helps us grow closer together. Just like we were able to make that rope come back together when we read, it creates this magical bond between parent and child, and grandparent and child, and uncle or auntie and child. And so I would love for folks to go to readingwithyourkids.com and learn about the magic show. And we do lots of special events, and we have a special event coming up for the new year. It's called Reading in the New Year, and that's
Mhm.
going to be a really wonderful moment. And folks can find out about that by going to readingintheNewYear.com.
I'll make sure that my listeners go on there and listen to the podcast, and the kids can join in too. And I'll do that by linking your description down below so that they can easily find you. But anywhere else on social media where they can also reach you?
Yes, a bunch of places. At Reading with Your Kids on Instagram,
Mhm.
Facebook page, which is facebook.com/reading with your kids. My personal Facebook page is Jedlie, Jedlie.
Mhm.
And on Twitter, it is at Jedlie Magic.
Jet Li. It actually sounds like Jet Li, but
You
I'll
know,
write it down for them.
one time, Phyllis, a school in Buffalo, New York, a
Uh-huh.
city which is near Niagara Falls, they
Mhm.
called me up, and the principal was so excited. He said, "Could you come out to our school on this date?" And I said, "Sure, that's free. I can come out." Oh, my kids are going to be so excited. And I said, "Well, that's wonderful. Yes, they love you." And I said, "They love me? How did they?" Okay. And they said, "Yes." He says, "All my kids, they love your movies. They think about you all the time." And I said, "Wait a minute. Are you thinking I'm that karate guy?" Jet Li? And he said, yes. And I said, well, your kids would be very disappointed if it's Jet Li and this little guy shows up. So yes, it sounds like it, but it's not. It's Jed Lee, Jedlie.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast and for making us smile on this amazing holiday special, 12 Days of Christmas, Jed.
You've been a wonderful host. Thank you so much for inviting me into your listeners' ears.
And I'd love to have you back here again on the New Year so that you can give us an amazing magic show like this one. So thank you so much once again for being part of the episode.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I had a lot of fun, Phyllis.
Oh my, time flies so fast when you're engulfed in magic. We were absolutely amazed today, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sorry that you never got to see the magic itself, but I hope you learned a lot from today's episode about being a magician, what it takes, the do's and don'ts. I hope some of your questions were answered, and if they were not, I will link all of Jed's social media down below. Make sure you go follow him. Make sure you go listen to his podcast if you love kids and family books, because he is an amazing man and he has amazing magic tricks. And please remember, magic is science, science is magic. And especially in this holiday season, this is what magic looks like. It comes in all shapes and sizes. But if you'd love to see him perform live here at Kara Live, please tell me through a DM or message me or just scream or have a banner, write it in the skyline. I'll see it actually and make it happen. But anyways, this has been day 5. I hope to see you here again tomorrow where we have a day 6 with a brand new guest. This has been KR Live Podcast and my name is Kenzie Rock. Have a magical week. Bye.